Welcome to the Artist Index. I'm Scott Bishop, your host for this episode. I'm a New Bedford-based singer, songwriter, and sound sculptor making music under the name SouthCoast. I also present the live concert series, Unexpected Music, which features SouthCoast musicians performing in non-traditional performing spaces around New Bedford. The In Focus podcasts are generously sponsored in part by Heavenly Spirits Importers and funded in part with grants from the New Bedford Cultural Council and the Fairhaven Cultural Council, local agency supported by the Mass Cultural Council, a state agency. I'd like to invite our guest to introduce himself and talk a little bit about himself and what he does.
I'm Ethan D. Aguiar. I'm a filmmaker and artrepreneur. I like to emphasize that because one of my goals as an artist is to show other creatives in any medium that it's not only possible, but it's a valid career option. I'm out to kill that term, starving artist, and change it to thriving artist.
Where did you start looking at the entrepreneur side and saying, I don't want to be the starving artist, I want to be thriving, but having a creative life and making a living from it?
I think a lot of things came into play with it. It was, working in the wedding industry, doing wedding videos, and then that was like my first actual job that I got for what I went to college for, which was communications, media studies, all that jazz. And I was there, and it was like, it was fine. It was a good job, and it was better than what I was doing before that. But it still wasn't what I thought it was going to be, graduating college and trying to get into filmmaking. And then just, I decided one day that I wanted to just pursue it on my own because I had a couple years experience now in the professional realm of filmmaking instead of just doing it for passion. I started out when I was skateboarding with my friends in high school. So even before that, I was always recording stuff at home and things like that. But skateboarding really amplified my passion for filmmaking when I started editing more and making these actual story-driven pieces. So then that translated well into the wedding realm, but it just wasn't fulfilling creatively. It was and it wasn't. It was a good spot to learn. I feel like I definitely sharpened my sword while I was there. You do weddings, you got to be on point, you got to be decisive. You can't have them, you can't just tell the bride and groom if they can redo their first kiss if you miss it.
You have to be ready.
Exactly.
At every moment.
So I think the job gave me the tools to become an effective director, filmmaker, being resourceful, thinking on your feet, that kind of stuff. But it just kind of got monotonous after a while, and it was just kind of like a rinse, repeat, formulaic job. That was when it started feeling like a job.
Right. How many different ways can you shoot a wedding? Really?
Yeah, exactly. And we were working for a guy that just kind of had a system, and if you kind of deviated from that, it was like you were met with resistance. So it wasn't, just that whole environment wasn't very creatively fulfilling for me. But it gave me the confidence that hey, I'm producing these videos and people are paying X amount of dollars for them. I think I could do this on my own. So I decided to just go off and start slow. I wasn't I always tell people pursue their passions and stuff like that, but I know that from a practical sense you can't just quit your job and go straight into it. It's not that easy. So I was fortunate enough where I could work construction with my dad while I was kind of gaining more clients and getting more projects under my belt, and he was super supportive too. I could basically make my own hours there, so I would work construction in the morning, then at lunchtime I'd kind of take a couple hours to do some editing, and then I'd go back to construction and do some late nights and things like that. So it was a slow, steady grind, but I just kept at it because in my mind it was I don't want to be doing anything else. I've had a bunch of jobs before, and nothing. Even though I had felt kind of like I hit a wall or a ceiling doing wedding videos, it still felt so good to be that be my job, filming things, editing things, telling stories. So I knew that's what I wanted to be doing, and I just made a bet on myself, and it seemed to have worked out a little bit.
What were the core things you learned from doing wedding videos? Because it sounds like you were able to hone your craft and learn about your craft by doing all those videos.
Yeah, for sure. So on the shooting side of it, you definitely have to be prepared. You have to know, the schedule and the run of show kind of thing. You got to think on your feet, because weddings, as much as you plan a wedding, it'll never go exactly according to plan. Think on your feet, be resourceful, and just like be friendly with people. Like if you're friendly with the photographer and the event planner and the bride and groom, things are going to go much smoother. Like everybody's there for a core mission, which is to have this great wedding experience. So as long as, everybody's kind of like that, like leave your egos at the door and all that kind of stuff. We're there to do a job, and the more we can collaborate with everybody else there, the smoother it's going to be. And then on the editing side of things, I think that's when I started really... All right, so to backtrack a little bit, when I was first getting into filmmaking in college, or taking it more seriously in college and with skateboarding and everything, I always knew I wanted to make videos, but I wasn't sure, like, well, what kind? I mean, there's a whole world out there of different types of videos and genres and different jobs out there, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted. But I think especially on the editing side of doing weddings, it really made me realize that my biggest passion with filmmaking is storytelling. And I really like meeting people and talking with people, so even a simple like interview can turn into a beautiful story. And I think that weddings really made me realize that storytelling was that kind of main thread that wove through all the different types of videos that I would make. I really liked meeting. I mean, you're meeting a couple for like not even a full day in most cases, but you're meeting them on one of the most special days of their entire lives. So they're really like open and happy, and like they honestly really bring you in, and you feel like part of the wedding party. And I think that just whole vibe of like meeting people, learning about them, and then getting to tell their story really made me have a deeper appreciation for beyond just the technical aspects of filmmaking, but the storytelling and the essence behind it. Like why am I doing what I'm doing? And yeah, that was a good kind of realization for me.
Well, that makes sense in a lot of ways, because first of all, filmmaking is kind of the ultimate team artistic endeavor. Like you need a crew to make it work. How did that feed into you, like, getting into other shoots, other kinds of material, and like develop a team and develop that sense of, being with people, working together? A
lot of what I learned doing weddings too was also what not to do. I mean, I had like, not the greatest experience with the guy that we were working for. So I saw a lot of like, I think working that job really showed me the difference between a boss and a leader. A leader is going to, rally people and bring them with them, instead of just like these underlings that are there to serve your purpose. I think an effective leader is doing, is doing more than what they ask of the people that work with them. So I think as much as it showed me, or as much as it kind of gave me the skills of what to do, it actually showed me like kind of what not to do, because you see really quickly like the stress that comes along with making wedding videos, or even just participating in a wedding. And I just kind of started slowly picking away at like, well, why are we so stressed at this wedding right now? Like, is it the actual wedding? Is it like, is like maybe the venue's giving us a hard time or something like that? So I started realizing that like teamwork is super effective. And then just common decency. Like, I don't like bossing people around already. And I will never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And I think that attitude serves me well, because one, I had to do a lot of this stuff on my own in the beginning. I had no help. I'm only like just now at a position where I can start hiring extra help. But you realize that, it is a huge undertaking, especially if you're trying to do bigger, better projects. I mean, I can do a single individual filmmaker can do a lot on their own, but your creativity is like unbound when you just have other people there.
That leads me to love letters to New Bedford, because, you talk about, getting into the middle of, people's lives. And in this case, you were getting in the middle of how people feel about New Bedford and about arts and culture here. Can you talk a bit about how the project developed?
It's funny because we were just talking about having a whole team and everything, and Love Letters was literally just me filming and doing everything. it was co-produced by Beatriz, who's over at the Whaling Museum. It was kind of like, I don't know, one of those serendipitous kind of things that you don't really realize you were working towards, but then it all comes together and you're just like, wow, this is incredible. You couldn't have planned this better. So I've been working with New Bedford Creative since I first went into business by myself. It was they were one of the first clients that I worked with, and they've been absolutely amazing. Literally one of my favorite clients, some of my favorite people. And we had been working for a few years, but then the summer of 2021, they just kind of had a project for me where they wanted me to go around New Bedford and capture all of the summer events that were going on. And it was more like we didn't really have a set final product in mind. It was just kind of building a content library. So literally, like, everything that was happening in New Bedford in summer of 2021, I was there with my camera. And we were capturing all of these amazing events and people and just like really good times. And it was at a perfect time, I think, too, because the restrictions from COVID had just started kind of being eased out and people were getting outside again. And I feel like that was what contributed to like a huge turnout. People were cooped up for way too long and they kind of wanted to get back into that community vibe. And then it was August, I believe, where they had created this. So two organizations, New Bedford Creative and Arts Midwest, came together for this initiative called Creating Connections, which was all about engaging the public with public art. So they created this kind of like roundtable of creative ambassadors that all had their own individual projects. Like, for example, Mandy Frazier had a great project. She would go to events or just post up somewhere and have a whiteboard and post-it notes. And as people were walking by, the whiteboard read on it, "What do you love about New Bedford?" And she was encouraging people to write down, one word, a couple words of what they loved about New Bedford, put it on the post-it note and put it on the whiteboard. And then she would take those words and paint them, graffiti style, like tagging style, on a mural, and then create a design with it. So I saw like a whale being made. I saw she did reggae on West Beach, and she did like break dancers and things like that. So it was really awesome to see. And that was just one of the many projects that was funded through this initiative. So I came on board because Margot and Jasmine, who was working for New Bedford Creative at the time, were just like, Ethan just needs to film this. Like, we need to document this and it needs to be Ethan. And already I was like so happy at that. Like, anytime that somebody refers work to you is a great day. But when somebody's like as adamant as they were about like, no, he is the guy that needs to do this. And I get it, because when I heard about the project, I was like, this is exactly the kind of things that I like to support happening in New Bedford, and I like to contribute to in any way I can. So it was just this perfect kind of meeting of the minds. And then as I learned more about the project, the initial idea was to make a, like 5-6 minute highlight video of all of these artists participating in this initiative and their projects. So the idea would be I would interview these artists, they'd talk about their projects, what came of it and things like that. But it was the first 3 people that we interviewed. I think it was Rhonda, Mandy, but most importantly, Maya Livramento was absolutely incredible in her interview. Me and Beatriz were interviewing her, and she literally had us in tears with some of the amazing things that she was saying about New Bedford. And then that was when I realized, like, there's something going on in these interviews when we're prompting people with these questions about New Bedford that is really just kind of giving them an opportunity to fully express their love for the city. So luckily, I went to Michael Johnson and Margot Saulnier from Arts Midwest and New Bedford Creative, respectively. And I just told them, like, hey, I think we have something way more special on our hands than just a simple, recap highlight. And fortunately enough, they trusted me, and they literally just told me, like, we trust you and your creative decisions, so just do what you feel is right. And then that just felt amazing. Like I had no boundaries on what I could do, and I could literally just construct this and work on it as if it was a passion project, but I was getting paid for it. So it was just incredible, because the fact that, I'm getting paid for it, so my bills are getting paid, I can direct all my focus onto this. And that's exactly what I did. I was lucky enough to have a couple of clients that were understanding that I could push their projects that I had also been working on simultaneously a little bit down the road when I explained to them this project and things like that. And then it just, every person that we interviewed after that was just more and more amazing. And the way Beatrice and I kind of set up the interviews was, in our minds, we knew what we wanted to talk to people about, but we also didn't want to have like set questions. We kind of wanted to blindside them, because I found that kind of, you get the more authentic kind of answers like that. Like there's no, we went to interviews, there's no time limit. I'm not in a rush or anything. I like to take my time with interviews. I like for it to feel very conversation-like, because that's when people open up and they give you the best answers. So that was, what we did. And some of the person's answers would prompt another question. And it, at some point, it didn't even feel like we were working. It just felt like we were friends in a room having a conversation. And I think that aspect of it really shines through in the film. We made the film. It honestly came out incredible. I consider it like a masterpiece of mine up until this point. It was kind of a showcase of everything I had learned and everything I had done up until that point in my career. And I was super proud of it. And then we had a private screening at the Whaling Museum, and like huge turnout. And I still won't forget the feeling I got when the film was over and everybody's applauding, and then I have to go up on stage and try to talk to people with tear-filled eyes. It was overwhelming. The response from the community, it was insane. It was honestly like one of the highlights of my career so far, and I'm just getting started. And then I met Seth Chitwood, who works at the Standard Times. He wrote an article about love letters, and he has been in the film industry for a long time, and he suggested that we enter love letters into film festivals, and we had never even considered that. We had never thought of it. We didn't know how to do it, but he helped us out and kind of just guided us on how to do that. And then now it's been in a film festival run for just about a year. I think December or January will make a full year. And this is going to sound like a humble brag, but I really lost count. I believe I believe we've gotten selected into 13 film festivals with 3 wins. So the wins were Kids First. We won Best Documentary. Texas Art House Film Festival, also Best Documentary. And then my favorite one was the Portuguese International Film Festival, where we also won Best Documentary. Oh, and Block Island. So 4 wins.
Wow.
Yeah, Block Island, another international film festival, Best Documentary Short on that one too. And it was just an incredible experience. Honestly, if the run had ended with just the Whaling Museum screening, I would have I still would feel about the project that I kind of feel now, where it's like, this is the most incredible thing that I've been a part of and been able to work on thus far. But then this whole film festival run and the response from the community, this film is almost a year old now, and there's still so much support and like almost mystery behind it, because so many people haven't seen it because we couldn't publicly show it being on a film festival run, that it's incredible to me. I can't say enough about it.
I can understand what people in the region get out of it automatically, just because it's focused on New Bedford. It can appeal to someone like Margot, who, full disclosure, is my wife. She grew up here, came back to work here. I come here as a transplant from New Hampshire and Boston. other people you interviewed, I'm sure, kind of cover the whole spectrum of the kinds of people who live here. What's the connection people outside of New Bedford, like in Portugal or Block Island or wherever, that they make with this film that is very specific about place, but it's connecting with them, even so?
I think it's funny that you mentioned the word transplants too, because I think a lot of the most passionate things that were said about the city of New Bedford came from people who weren't originally from here. And I think that speaks volumes about the city, the community, the vibes we have here. I think, so like in the case of the Portugal Film Festival, I mean, I'm Portuguese, and I think it's pretty well known that New Bedford is heavily, Portuguese influence. There's a lot of Portuguese immigrants here, a lot of people that have been here for generations. A lot of the Azorian whalers, even back in the history. So there's a lot of ties with New Bedford and Portugal throughout its entire history. And it was funny to me because with all those ties and everything, the film itself really doesn't mention Portuguese culture that much. I think we mentioned it like once, to be honest. There's a lot of like Guatemalan and Central American culture, and a few people that we interviewed from Central America. There was Gerardo and Paulina and Fidel Castro, which, like, what a name. They're all artists from, Fidel is, I believe he was from Guatemala. I'm so sorry if I got that wrong. But Gerardo and Paulina are from Chile, and they came here, and again, it was just like the most amazing things said about New Bedford. Like, don't get me wrong, everybody had beautiful things to say about New Bedford, but I think where the people that are from here get kind of jaded to how amazing New Bedford really is, and not in a bad way, but it's just, we kind of think like, oh, every place must be like this. Like, every place must have this huge sense of pride of their hometown, and every place must have this rich historical culture and this rich melting pot of different cultures, and like, it's not always the case. And I think what really deepened my appreciation for the city that I already love so much was seeing it through other people's eyes. And that was what was special about the Portugal Film Festival, because there wasn't any specific mentions of Portugal. So I really feel like, imposter syndrome kicks in every now and then. So even though there's film festival runs and stuff, you're just thinking like, do I really deserve this or that? But the Portugal one was really like, wow, I think they really just got it. Like, they got the message, they got the story. I think the way that everybody speaks about New Bedford and the storyline is what really shines through. And there's something so connecting in that story of, pride and love for your hometown and your community that I think is transcendent to any place. You could apply that love to any place, and I think people really see that because they feel it about their own community. So when they see that about a certain community like New Bedford, they resonate with that and they connect to that.
How did you tame all that material? Because you must have shot an ungodly amount of material at events, in addition to, I don't know, how many interviews did you do? Interviews,
I believe there was like 17 or 18 interviews, which was, it was insane. I had the stats at one point. I think it was, in total, all of the events, and again, the events that I covered during that summer weren't specifically for this project, but it was so great that happened, and that's what I mean about that serendipitous kind of feeling to this project. It just felt like I was, we were capturing all those events just to create this content library, and we're like, we don't know what we're going to use it for, and then boom, Love Letters comes out, and we're just like, this is what we've been capturing all this footage for. But I think all of the events and the interviews combined, I think I had about like 120 hours worth of footage, something like that. Yeah, it was insane. And I mean, part of it is my fault. I shoot way more than what I need. It's just kind of like a good tactic of mine. I'd rather be editing from a place of abundance than a place of scarcity. So a lot of footage, but again, it was something I was really passionate about. I'm already passionate about filmmaking, but then making a film of this caliber about my hometown that I love so much, it didn't feel like work. It felt like play. And then 18 interviews, at least an hour each. I don't know. I mean, honestly, sometimes I look back and I'm just like, that was an insane amount of content that we sifted through, and I really do feel like we got the best of the best stuff out of it. There's always things in interviews especially that, never see the light of day, and it's hard to make those creative decisions sometimes, but I just feel like it was almost like this story kind of fell together by itself. I get that cliche thing of like, I'm just a vessel and the stories are passing through me, but I really think it was. I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is not my story. This is Love Letters for New Bedford is by and for the people of New Bedford. I put all those pieces together, but they gave me the content, they gave me the stories, and the video is for them. So it was just kind of like it all fell into place. I sifted through interviews and I just found common themes, like a lot of people talked about the creative community here and the creative economy here and how the city is so embracing of that and how that makes us so unique, that we've really embraced arts and culture and made it a part of our way of life here. So you can see those common threads when you're editing, and then I just started placing it together. But I mean, I think a prime example that shows this is while I was working on it, I had a rough cut, and there was barely any footage laid over it, like of all the events and everything, because that's usually something I do more towards the end. I like to start with the interview, and the interview is kind of like the skeleton. I mean, the interviews create the storyline, which is like the skeleton of the video. And we played it for, we had a Zoom meeting, me, Michael, Margot, and Beatrice, and we played just the interviews and just hearing people's words about New Bedford, literally all of us in tears, just like, this is going to be such an amazing project. So I think that speaks a lot to the work and the final product. When something's coming together like that and you don't feel like you have to do any work, it's really something special.
So when do people in New Bedford get to see it as a regular thing? Because it's been shown here a couple of times. I know the Whaling Museum, there was also a showing at Play Arcade a while back.
Yeah.
But when will it actually officially debut here in a way that people can now regularly see it?
Right. So we had a couple private screenings that were invite only because we couldn't publicly show it while it was in a film festival run. All these film festivals want like exclusivity for showing them and things like that. But now the film festival run is coming to an end. January 2024 is the last film festival date. And we're kind of like, we've been included in so many festivals now that even if we don't make the last few, that's fine with us. We've already won. So December 14th, which is going to align with December's AHA night, we will be finally doing 2 public viewings at the Whaling Museum with Q&A and a panel of, some of the artists and people involved in the project to answer questions, to talk, and things like that. I forget when AHA night is. I think it's like maybe 5 or 5:30. If people follow New Bedford Creative or me on social, you'll get all of the information you need. But December 14th, AHA night in December, public viewing at the Whaling Museum. And it's free. The more people that show up and show out, the better. And then after that, we can finally host it online. So I know Destination New Bedford, we're talking about them hosting it on the New Bedford's website. New Bedford Creative is going to host it. I'm sure Arts Midwest will want to put it somewhere on their page, and then after that, everybody can see it if they can't make the premiere.
And now you're currently in the middle of a very different project with Seth Chitwood. Can you tell us about Pickleball Is Life?
Yeah. So again, it's just kind of like one of those things that just came together that you couldn't have planned any better. So like I said, Seth Chitwood, we met when he was writing an article about love letters for the Standard Times. He had nothing but great things to say about my work and the project itself, and I think he was really impressed by the fact that I did it all myself. Like, if I was to roll credits on New Bedford, on Love Letters for New Bedford, it would just be like directed by Ethan, filmed by Ethan, edited by Ethan, sounded by Ethan.
Ethan.
Yeah, like all of that. It was insane. But I think I really impressed him with that. And again, to me, it was just kind of like, when you love what you do, you can do that kind of level of work easily. So we got to talking. We quickly became friends. And like I said, he had been doing this kind of stuff in the film industry, I want to say for like 10, 12 years. And he was just adamant about like, hey, we really need to get you on a set and do that. So then, I don't know how he met people, but he met Carol Ann DeMarco and Leanne West, who are the creators of the Pickleball show. So they had a script for a pilot episode. I think they were shopping around for a director and maybe some other crew to kind of really bring it to fruition. And they somehow met Seth, and they all got to talking, and he was just like, hey, I have, this guy out of New Bedford. He's really great, and he's, willing to work. And he set up a meeting for all of us. We met. We immediately clicked. I liked the script a lot. I thought it was funny. I thought it was very timely with how popular pickleball is getting these days. And they were just awesome to talk to. I mean, they were like, we clicked right away. It was all good vibes, and it sounded like we were all kind of excited for this idea to happen, and it was just a matter of figuring out how we could make it happen. So, a couple of rounds of going over the script and refining it and making a plan. And then in May of last year, before the strikes, thankfully, we went out to New Jersey and we filmed 5 days. I brought a buddy of mine, Dan Goldsmith, with me. Another talented cinematographer and editor. And that was the crew. They had hired a sound guy and assistant directors and all of the parts that you need. But it was kind of insane to me because usually when you first get a chance to be on a film set, you're like a PA, a production assistant. And literally what that means most of the time when you have little experiences, you're carrying stuff, you're running cables, you're running and grabbing coffee for people. You're more observing, and that's how you're learning. They immediately made me co-director and director of photography, which is an insane undertaking for having... I was confident in my skills as a filmmaker, but I had no experience in this realm at all. So I was confident, but I was not blind to the enormity of this task and how lucky I was to get this opportunity. And then, honestly, it was just so fun. There's always stressful parts, but I think doing weddings really kind of prompted me for this world. There were times where people were like rushing around and this and that, and I'm just thinking like, man, I would love to see these people at a wedding because I feel like they'd be even more stressed out than they are now. And me and Dan both came from doing weddings, and there were points where they're like, "Oh, is camera ready?" And it's like, yeah, we've been ready. Like, so they never really had to like wait for us. Like we were just, the whole crew was just like, everybody's there to do their specific jobs and play their specific roles. And everybody was so on point with their roles that it really went smoothly. You inevitably, with a project that massive, you inevitably run into things that, don't go your way, or you're fighting with, sounds in the background or people, or, you try to book a shoot at one place and then they change their mind last minute. There's all these kind of crazy things that pop up. But I think everybody there was focused on doing the best that they could do in their position. And we all believed in this project and really wanted to see it come to fruition. So it was honestly an amazing experience. And it was a lot of fun. I really, the first day in the beginning, maybe like the first hour of the first day was kind of easier stuff because we were just filming like these interview style things. So I guess I should backtrack a little bit. So Pickleball is a comedy series filmed as a mockumentary. So kind of in the style of The Office, Parks and Rec, that kind of thing, where there's these, talking directly to the film crew parts, where the characters of the show are talking to the film crew. And I really liked that because, one, when we first got there, we kind of eased into it because we did these interview style shoots with some of the main characters. But then also, I mean, it's almost like if you've ever watched Succession and you heard Mike Mylod talk about how they filmed it, the shots aren't set up ahead of time where action is going to happen and the camera's already rolling in that direction. The camera is a character itself. So there's something happening and the camera whips over and catches it last minute. It makes you really feel like you're there watching these events unfold, which I think really grounds this series and makes it feel more immersive for people watching it. Like, we're not, it's not this, not in a bad way, but it's not this like cleaned, polished things. It seems like it's happening in real time before us. So that was not only interesting to watch when we see the final product, but that was really fun to shoot because we're for all intents and purposes, the documentary crew that is like us that are filming it are a character in the show. And so it was just really fun, unique experience. And I'm super thankful that I got it. I'm super thankful that, I met these people and I got to work on this because it was a lot of fun.
Where does it stand with the show now? I mean, so this is a pilot they were shooting.
Yeah. So the pilot itself, honestly, the pilot that we shot was so long that we actually broke it up into 2. So it's kind of like 2 opening episodes. Which happens a lot these days. If you see like Disney Plus is putting up like 2 premiere episodes at once. As it stands right now, we're trying to shop it around to investors and get backing for it so that we can complete the rest of the episodes and make a full season. And there's things happening with that. I can't say too much, but the one way or another, the future is looking bright for pickleball, that's for sure.
The show and the sport.
Exactly.
Who do you look at as your key influences as a filmmaker?
Damn, that's a good question. Okay, so to prompt this answer, I need to mention one thing. Throughout my entire filmmaking journey, from going to Bridgewater State University and taking up communications till now, one key piece of advice that people keep trying to beat into my brain is like niche down, find your niche, find that one thing that separates you. And like, I never really bought into that. I think maybe it works for certain things, like if you're a pop star, maybe you're not exactly going to start doing country music. But I mean, look at Taylor Swift. She came from country, became a pop star. Maybe she didn't believe in niching down either. I think when you focus too much on niching down, you put yourself in a box. I think it's good to take inventory of the things that you really like about what you do, but to try to fit yourself into some genre that already doesn't do a good job of embodying what those things actually are, I think you're doing yourself a disservice by trying to just be one thing. On the other hand, if I had to think of one kind of common thread that runs through all my work, it would be storytelling. I think that stories are the most important part of any kind of content creation. If you're making a 16-minute documentary about arts and culture in New Bedford, or you're making a 5-second sketch on Instagram, I think either one of those, if you have a good story, it's going to be successful. So focus on that. So I say that to say that my influences range from, there's amazing music video directors like Dave Meyers, Cole Bennett, a bunch of other people. I'm horrible with names and I'll forget them, but there's that. There's people like Mike Mylod, Quentin Tarantino, Martin Scorsese, all these people that not only are gifted cinematographers, Christopher Nolan, my God, are not only gifted behind the camera, but they're gifted storytellers. And then even YouTubers, I mean, Casey Neistat, Daniel Schiffer, Peter McKinnon, all of these people I think are just so, they're so uniquely themselves in their work that it's one of those things like Dr. Dre, right? Dr. Dre makes a beat. You don't need to hear a producer tag, yo, it's Dr. Dre on the beat, to know that that's a Dr. Dre beat. There's so much of himself and his style in his work that you just know. And I feel like those are kind of the filmmakers and people that I really draw a lot of influence from. And just in general, I mean, you know, Wu-Tang was a huge influence on mine. And, you know, you can make the ties between hip-hop and filmmaking, and especially in the case of Wu-Tang with the RZA kind of going off and producing some films, and Method Man becoming an actor. But I think the thing that really influenced me about them was, again, it was just another group of storytellers. And they made everything that they thought was cool, they made it cool for other people. I remember, you know, I mean, they made like Kung Fu movies and Marvel comics cool at a time where it was not uncool, but it wasn't as popular as it is today. Yeah. And they just kind of were like, well, we like this, so we're going to make it cool. And I try to do that with my work too, to the point where, like, you know, I remember getting made fun of for reading Marvel comics when I was in like junior high or something. And now you get made fun of if you don't know who Iron Man is. Like, right. So it's kind of insane that they were the type of people that really believed in what they did and believed in their storytelling of them as a group and their brotherhood and where they came from and their come up. And that bled so deep into their work that they became this national legendary icons. Like, who doesn't know, even if you don't listen to hip-hop, you know who Wu-Tang is. Mm-hmm. And so that, you know, I draw influences from everywhere, and I think the thing that really connects all these things is just storytelling and this kind of like, you know, intense confidence in yourself and what you do, because your confidence stems from your work that you do. I'm very much like, I try not to take a lot of credit for, like, even this film. You know, the other day we were at a meeting and we had to like introduce ourselves, and I'm just like promoting the film. Yeah, it's gonna come out December 14th or whatever. And then I go sit down, and Margot was like, "Get back up here!" And then she's like, "This film has been in 13 festivals, won 3." Like, so it's just kind of like, I think my confidence comes from my work, but I always can keep the focus on that. Like, you can't go into something thinking that, you know, you're the best and this and that, because you're setting yourself up for, you know, maybe overlooking something and making a mistake. But I do feel that, like, my passion for what I do and my passion for storytelling is unmatched. Like, I might not be the best, but I'm going to work the hardest for sure.
Well, what you're describing is finding your superpower as opposed to finding your niche, because that superpower, storytelling, translates everywhere. It translates regardless of genre, medium. I mean, it's like you're describing with Wu-Tang. Like, they're doing records, they're doing films, they're bringing references in that are, you know, outside of typical hip hop, and they're doing it because they have that power to bring those things in and connect with people the way that you do. Yeah. And also what you're describing is, if you carve out a niche for yourself and you stay in it, how do you grow? It's really tough to do, as opposed to what you're doing. Like, you couldn't ask for two very different projects than Love Letters to New Bedford or Pickleball Is Life. Like, I mean, aside from the fact there's a mockumentary thing going, that's pretty much the only direct connection. And yet, you're bringing your talents to both and creating really powerful stuff.
Yeah, I like that idea. You know, don't focus on your niche. Find your superpower. Find what makes you unique and what you're the best at. And you got to be honest with yourself too about it. Like, if there's no shame in identifying your weaknesses, because you can work on those and then turn them into strengths. But you really need to find that unique thing that separates you from people. And it's not even about separating yourself from people, but it's just about, what are you the best at that you want to keep getting better at, and contribute your strengths to the creative community and to people. Because, like, what is art if it's not shared, really? Right. It's and I like, so I've read the new Rick Rubin book, which is amazing. I recommend everybody pick it up. It's called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. And in it, and in some of the podcasts that he's been on too, he just talks about like make art for you first. Like you are the audience before the audience is the audience. So that's what I mean of like, don't worry about niching down, because it's like, what if I want to do music videos, but I also want to do horror films, and I also want to do documentaries, and I also want to do, sketch comedy. Why can't I? Like, imagine, some of the best directors. Like, imagine, imagine Christopher Nolan doing a music video. That'd be a crazy music video.
No kidding. Well, I think of David Fincher, because he started in music videos and commercials and went to film. And when you see like a Fincher film or a music video, like it's him right away, because he has a particular look, and yet at the same time, the look's not inflexible. He can create something new with it each time he makes a film or a commercial or a music video.
Yeah, and think about the aspects of it are all the same, right? There's a lot of music videos now these days that are trying to be more story-driven and things like that, where they're actually kind of telling a story or being more film-like with their music video. And I mean, if you think about it, the best artists too are storytellers. So you already have all of the ingredients of a film with a thing like music videos. So why wouldn't you be able to just, switch between both genres easily and seamlessly?
I think Rick Rubin is also a great example, because, he's been a music producer for going on 40 years now. He doesn't know his way around a mixing board. He doesn't know what mic to pair with which voice or instrument. And I've seen people like talk about this book and make fun of that. It's like, you don't get it. This guy creates an environment for creativity. That's his superpower. That's why he can work with everyone from Run DMC to Johnny Cash, because he has that superpower. He could do that with anyone. Instead of being locked into a niche of, well, I'm just a hip hop producer. He's like, no, I'm going to go all over the place because I don't need to know the mixing board. I have people who can do that. Yeah. But my superpower is creating the environment where people do great work, and that is incredible.
And you really see that when you read his book too, because I would say the book itself was a real good mixture, like 50-50 mixture of things I already kind of knew about creativity and things that I didn't know. But even the things that I did know about creativity, he does such a good job at articulating it into words that it just makes more sense for me and just reinforces these points of like, oh, I'm not crazy. Like I was onto something when I was thinking of this or trying to do this or this is my approach to making my, videos and things like that. And you can take his advice from being a music producer and put it into any creative medium, because the way he kind of describes his process and his superpower is in this kind of not generic but more like universal kind of way where it can just be applied to so many different aspects of creativity. And I think, like you mentioned, that's kind of his superpower, and it's something that people don't really think a lot about, especially like, to go back to my term of artrepreneur is like, I think a lot of times people are so worried about making it, which obviously you should be. Like, if you're trying to do this as your full-time job, it's not easy, and you're gonna work harder than you've ever worked. But it's going to be so worth it, because you'll feel so fulfilled. You'll feel like you're finally living a life of purpose. But I think sometimes the mistake that creatives make is that we focus too much on the business side of things, and we don't remember that we're an artist first. One of the greatest quotes I ever got when I was starting to work for myself was, don't let the artist run the business and don't let the businessman make the art. If you don't practice your craft, if you don't evolve as an artist, it doesn't matter what successes or opportunities come your way, because you won't be equipped for it. Like if I didn't go out and film and teach myself how to be an effective storyteller and everything, what would have even mattered having an opportunity like Love Letters fall in my lap? I wouldn't have been in a position to make the most of it. Or maybe, with everything that I've experienced, maybe I would have just done that original highlight idea if I didn't have this deep love for storytelling and always trying to get better at it and learn more and do more with it. So I think, I like to tell other creatives, prioritize the art and the profits will come. And that's the best advice I can give.
It's also that element of compartmentalizing the two things. Like you talk about, don't let the businessman make the art. You have to create, and you have to, in a lot of cases, not really necessarily think too much about the commercial implications. Your job is to find a way to take that art and then sell it. And if you keep it separated, then you can keep the art expressed the way you want it to at the same time while keeping an eye on how do I sustain this.
Exactly. I mean, some of the things that you want to do as an artist don't make sense as a businessman. Like, yeah. I think artists, it's very important for artists to take time to do nothing. Like, I think I'm not one of those people that's like, oh God, social media, it's ruining us. I think it's an effective tool, but I think one of the things that it has really robbed us of is boredom. We are no longer bored. We have a phone in our hand, so we are entertained in some capacity at all times. And I cannot tell you how many of my best ideas came out of me doing nothing, me just sitting around with my own thoughts swirling around in my head. And when you think of like, all right, I'm trying to develop a business plan and I need to make a certain amount of time every day to just do nothing. Like, that doesn't make sense from an entrepreneur standpoint, but as an artist, it's essential. You'll avoid burnout, you'll get new inspiration, you'll have time to feel good about what you're doing. If you're working too hard where you're not having fun creating the art anymore, you need to kind of take a step back and reassess what you're doing, because again, if you prioritize the art, the profit will come, I promise.
I also think of something Sting said, which is, there's input time and output time, and you can't create really great art if you don't have things coming in. If it's nonstop creating art and you don't take that time to breathe, read a book, do yoga, go hang out with friends, you're going to be recycling the stuff that you've already done instead of having something new come in and then kind of synthesize that into your work.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to just not always be consuming as well. When you don't get me wrong, I search on YouTube all day for inspiration for, wow, this is a really good vlog episode idea, or this is a good, documentary idea. Those are great. Every time I watch, Hulu or some kind of film or something, it's almost like half research because I'm learning things or I'm watching things and kind of being inspired by it. But it's also important to be inspired by just life and living. Every year I go to this cabin in Vermont with no electricity, no power, nothing, for at least 5 days, and I just chill, just me and my cat Jasper, just doing nothing. Like, I can read, I can drink coffee. Honestly, I don't even look at a clock. I lose all sense of time. I'm just totally in tune with my body, and I go to sleep when I'm tired. I make food when I'm hungry. I wake up when I naturally wake up, and it is the most freeing, life-changing experience because you're living a slower paced life at that point. And it's funny because you would think, I'm not going to think about work. I'm just going to relax and not worry and this and that. But then it's I have that time to really tap into my own creative spirit. And it's almost like I get more ideas for things I want to do when I'm up there because I'm in this relaxed state. And it's just kind of Rick Rubin in his book talks about the source, which is where all creative ideas come from. And I think that the more noise you push out of your daily life, the more in tune you get with that source. Ideas come to us sometimes out of nowhere, and you literally say it this idea came out of the blue, or I don't know how I thought of this. I think that creating those environments, you're almost doing what Rick Rubin does with the artists he works with. You're creating this environment where creativity can just be free, and then you're just open to receiving it. You're not really doing any work. You're just kind of cataloging your experience of letting creativity flow. And I think that that's super, super important for artists in general, but especially practicing, quote unquote professional artists that make a full-time living off of their art. I think it's super important.
Ethan, is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like to go into?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I would say, follow New Bedford Creative, follow me on all socials, and you'll be up to date with everything. The Love Letters premiere, the pickleball stuff, and any other of the multitude of crazy, ambitious projects that I have coming down the line.
Fantastic. Ethan, thanks for hanging out and chatting today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another In Focus podcast, which is generously sponsored in part by Heavenly Spirits Importers and funded in part with grants from the New Bedford Cultural Council and the Fairhaven Cultural Council, local agency supported by the Mass Cultural Council, a state agency. I'm Scott Bishop, and thanks for listening to the Artists Index.